It's Thursday, December 18th, and the big budget came in, and Iain's got a suit and tie on. Somebody sent us a couple of shekels. Look at that. We're competing with CBC's budget now. You know, they've got 1.55 billion. We're short 1.55 billion. We're just a tad short. But like I said, Jim Check and Iain Burns here with the really big show, Canada's best undiscovered news commentary show on the internet by far. And we're going to prove it to you every day. And we're going to prove it to you today because we do have a really big show. You're going to learn more on this show than you're going to learn anywhere else. And we're going to show you what the CBC is trying to teach you. Teach you, I should. That's probably a good way to put it. Teach you or narrative you. Anyway, some of the headlines for today. Americans lay out what it's going to take to get a deal. Let's make a deal. CBC goes all in for Carney to the point where it makes you feel a little uncomfortable. Poilievre stands with Smith on a controversial issue. Alberta has what the world wants, and it's starting to come to them. Liberal gets busted. It must be Christmas. Get ready for the New Testament on climate from the Liberals. Put a shovel in the ground. Come on. Enough talk. Feds make cuts, maybe. Foreigners leaving Canada. Canada funding research that attacks Canada. That seems odd, no? Are federal employees above the law? Apparently they think so. Russia very active in the Arctic with nuclear fleet. BC has had enough of EB. Who would have thought that being tough on crime would work? Trump makes speech to the nation. And the U.S. economy, a tale of two nations. A shaming backfires on a Karen. TV's dead. Let's call it. Let's call it right here, right now. TV is dead. Starlink, the largest global communication company in the world. I'm going to show you that. I'm going to show you that and a lot more. And we've got a lot. We got lots on the EU too. We got lots on BC. But we got lots going on today. Again, that's why it's called the really big show. And if you could like, subscribe, share, help us get it out to the more people. We do have an active group of daily listeners, and if you could share it and get it out to a larger group, and maybe we can make some changes here in Canada and do what media is supposed to do, and that's hold power accountable, because the CBC, look at that, you're already getting some kudos there, looking sharp.
All right.
No, yeah. Instead of just two guys, we started off with two guys, well, it was me in a hat, and you hidden just a microphone. Now look at that. It's been it's over a year now we've been doing this now, no?
Wow. Time flies, eh?
Time flies, and maybe next year in a year we'll actually have some microphones that work better and all that kind of stuff. And maybe the CBC will cough up a little of their budget. Look, you even got another thing, looking all pro, buddy. Iain, the sharpest, smartest guy on the internet as well. And I say that very, we bring a different perspective for sure. With my financial background, and Iain was an international journalist and worked for the Daily Mail and a couple of other London newspapers. And, you're going to get more perspective here than you're going to get anywhere else. And I say that confidently. But let's get on with it. Let's get to it because we got lots. There it is. The Americans have laid out what they want. And lo and behold, what's one of the things that has come out there? Supply management. We knew that. We said it over and over and over again. And that's the thing that the Liberals, that was one of the first bills they put out there, was we protect supply management at all costs, at the expense of the auto sector, at the expense of the softwood lumber, at the expense of everything, right? Supply management has been laid out as one of the things that must be addressed. Canada will have to make changes to supply management and highly protected dairy market if it wants to continue trading freely with the U.S. That was from one of Donald Trump's trade representatives who told Congress that earlier. Jamieson Greer also said another Trump White House priority is the Online News Act. And that's odd. We've been fighting the Online News Act forever, and you and I said that. We're probably going to have to rely on the Americans to get the Online News Act because there is no motivation here in Canada to change it because the Liberals have media where they want them, crippled, corrupted, and at their knees begging. So the Americans are likely going to save independent media in Canada. Odd. And I meant to make this point yesterday. Somebody said something about try to get an answer from the U.S. Iain has. He sent an email to the State Department. You get an answer in half a day. How long has it been with Mark Miller? How many days?
I've got an email sat in my drafts that I'm about to send, and I sent it on. Let's have a look. I'll just confirm. The 1st of December. So very easy to remember that. So that's 18 days that I've been waiting.
And Stephen Guilbeault prior to that, and how many people prior to that, and how many letters have we written to Mark Carney, Justin Trudeau, that go unanswered. The Liberals seem, Steve McNall, one of the most respected business reporters in Kelowna, like 30 years serving this community, 7 emails to Stephen Fuhr, the newly elected MP here, no response. No response. And he knows him by name. Zero response. So among the other things that the Americans want addressed is the Online News Act, the online streaming, and the provincial bans on distribution of U.S. alcohol, discriminatory procurement measures in Ontario, Quebec, and BC, complicated customs registration for Canadian recipients of U.S. exports, and Alberta's unfair treatment of electrical power distribution for providers in Montana. And this is for both countries. This is for Mexico and Canada, strengthening the rules of origin for non-automotive industrial goods to ensure that the benefits of trade, and that's when they buy parts from, especially Mexico, and they buy parts from, China or other places, and then put them in the vehicles, and then say, oh yeah, this is all Mexican. Enhancing economic security alignment on tariffs, export controls, and investment screening. Developing mechanisms to penalize offshoring of U.S. production to Mexico or Canada as a result of regulatory and other arbitrage. Developing a critical minerals marketplace to incentivize more mining, processing, recycling, reuse. You can read this stuff yourself. And then force labor import bans. I mean, did we not send a big contract to China just now? Did we not do that?
It's pretty light though, this, isn't it? That was I was looking at this document earlier, and it's kind of, where's all the other stuff? Where's like lumber? Where's steel? Where's
but I think
everything else? But I guess that sort of implies that they reckon that can all be dealt with outside of CUSMA, that's not going to be part of the free trade agreement. So that's bad news, I think. My instinct is that that's bad news for the auto industry. That's bad news for wood and steel, because that suggests that what they've been saying is actually true and honest, that they do really want to bring that back to the US, and they don't want a Canadian element to their steel supply or wood supply anymore.
But these are hills that the Liberals have wanted to die on, and that includes Poilievre, though, too, right? When they passed that, they said that this is non-negotiable, and it seems like a hill that they want to die on, but I think most Canadians don't want to die on this hill. And here's a little bit from Katie Simpson of the CBC as she lays it out.
Today, the top American trade official for the Trump administration, Jamieson Greer, submitted a list of complaints about Canada and Mexico to Congress, which essentially outlined the concessions it is seeking in order for the U.S. to remain in that three-way trade deal known in Canada as CUSMA. Here is what some of the U.S. wants from Canada. First, an end to those provincial bans on the sale of American booze. That's got to be over. Another point, making it easier for American farmers to sell dairy products into Canada. That's a long-standing complaint Americans have had about Canadian dairy practices. The Trump administration also has problems with what's called the Online News Act, which forces some American tech giants to pay for Canadian news content. And it says Alberta is treating electricity producers in Montana unfairly. It wants that to change. It also had a list of complaints about Mexico that was very largely in line with complaints we've heard for a long time about labor practices in Mexico, environmental standards in Mexico, that kind of thing. But there are some changes it wants from both Canada and Mexico, to look at changes to strengthen what's known as rules of origin, which basically means finding ways to do more manufacturing production in North America rather than rely on outside countries for cheaper parts. It also wants to develop a critical minerals marketplace to boost.
That's good. I mean, she's just sat reading the list that we just read. So, Online News
But she
Act.
looks a lot better than us.
Hey, you look spectacular today.
I wish I looked like her. I wish I had clothes on. But do you hear the way that they just skirt over the Online News Act? Like,
That's what I was
not going to get any airtime. That's not going to get any focus. It's just about the big American tech giants making them pay for news content, but not actually discussing what's really happened since that foolish law was enacted.
Do you know who breaks most of the news stories in Canada? It's independent journalists. Hollywood Blacklock, Sam Cooper's, all these people. And CBC, what do? Feast at the trough. Feast at the trough. Feast at the trough. And here's the
But they also even suppress discussion of this terrible disease that's been introduced into Canada's media ecosystem. It doesn't interest them. They don't want to talk about it because it doesn't affect them. They neither benefit nor suffer as a consequence of it.
Yeah, everybody making comments on Iain looking sharp. Let's encourage him to keep it up so that we can, there's that show on the internet called Between Two Ferns. We can do Between Two Ties. What's in the middle there is what we're going to be discussing, Between Two Ties. Tied up. Food professor, and he said that for a long time as well. He even did a good interview on it, outlining what's supply management, and it hurts the consumer. That's the big thing. Supply management benefits very few. It really benefits the MPs because that's where they get their power base, lobby groups, but it hurts the consumer. We're paying more for milk and dairy and eggs and poultry. But food professor is saying there's only 3 certainties in life: death, taxes, and the dairy farmers pretending trade deals will ruin them and lining up for a check in Ottawa. And I've talked to somebody that ran a dairy farm and said there's a lot of people in dairy that don't like it either. So we're going to have to dump milk into the drain because of the quotas.
I mean, can you imagine that? Like, there's something seriously, like, on a sort of primitive level, there's something just so wrong about that, isn't there? And it must feel wrong for them to do that as well. It's like, this is what you spend all your time producing. These cows, I don't know if you've ever been to a dairy farm, but their lives aren't great, really. These cows having to just constantly pump milk out. It's quite sort of miserable when you see them, and then just think all that work, all that suffering is just like down the drain. I can imagine it makes them pretty unhappy.
Yeah, I mean, the cow, it's ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous. And how many industries are we going to sacrifice for the supply management agreement? And it's not just the Americans that don't like it. We also can't get a free trade deal with the UK, like cheese and all that kind of stuff. It's blocked all around the world, and the Europeans have said it too. So this is a hill that some lobby group has basically solidified, like all the MPs. And a lot of this is for Quebec and Ontario. It doesn't really affect the rest of Canada that much.
To sort of summarize why, to put it in plain-ish English, why it is that these countries are so upset about it is because it's not the free market. It's not free market economics. It's not free trade. Because the system that we have for dairy and some of the agricultural products is not free. It's state-sponsored, basically. It's much closer to socialism or communism than it is to free market capitalism. And just like we don't want to do trade deals with China, or we often criticize Chinese trade practices, that we open ourselves up to that kind of criticism on supply management, don't we? It's quite easy to understand. I think it's quite obvious, but as we've said many times, it's a political hot potato, isn't it? And therefore everybody pretends that it's okay. Even Pierre Poilievre, the most remarkable phenomenon, to see him cheering on supply management, this guy who's like free market economics to the core.
And on the Online News Act, make no mistake, it is crippling media. Close to 100 outlets have failed since it come into effect. And it's cut traffic for outlets like ourselves in half, cut revenue in half. And that's not just us, even the CBC, they have plummeting. They just get access to the trough, whereas most people don't get access to the trough like they do. And the plan, and Carney said it to us when we asked the question, that their plan to combat this is to just give more money to the CBC. And we can see that their cost per viewership has gone through the roof as their viewership falls off a cliff, but their funding continues to increase now at $1.55 billion. And you tell me if they're doing a good job. Online News Act is a form of censorship. I also did an interview with John Carpe. We talked about, you've done interviews with Michael Geist. We've done we've done more work on Bill C-18 probably than every outlet in Canada combined. You know why? Nobody else wants to do it. Nobody else wants to do it, right? Because they're at the begging bowl. Almost half the salaries of journalists across Canada are being paid for the government. And I've asked another journalist, let's work together, they said, on some stories. And I said, let's do the Online News Act. He's like, no, we don't want to risk losing our funding. What does that tell you?
And that's it. That's true. That's true. That, like, as corrupt and as sort of cloak and dagger as that sounds, it's true. They don't want to report on a policy of the government because they're worried that the government will remove their funding. You know, we're not making that up. That's true. That's real. And that's Canada. You know, you'd think, wouldn't you? We're going to check CBC later. You'd think that would be headline news, but alas, it's not even news.
And here you go. You know, like we did that CP story. Yes, we talked about that CP story where they compared Carney and Trudeau, and said that Trudeau was mainly performative, and that they don't do interviews. Carney hasn't been doing interviews with the, you know, like the Canadian media, and lo and behold, here's one with Rosie Barton. I don't know if it's an interview or just more PR, or if this was a sponsored content piece or what this was, but here's just a little clip of what went on there in this interview.
The Prime Minister made it clear that he believes there is, as you said off the top there, a spectrum of MPs, a variety of MPs who are at this moment in time questioning the best approach to governing the country. He talked about how there are people who don't believe that slogans are the best way forward, that do believe that actions are the best way forward. So I did ask him about those comments by Pierre Poilievre and whether he would be okay getting a majority just through other people suddenly crossing the aisle and becoming part of his caucus.
We're going to play that clip here of the interview here first. Let's play that next clip here.
To Pierre Poilievre recently, his message to you was that if you want a majority, you have to go back to the Canadian people to get it and not do it, by his words, dirty backroom deals. Are you comfortable getting a majority by people crossing the floor?
Well, we're in a parliament, and when we pass legislation, we need more people voting for it than against it. I mean, that's the way. Last time I checked, that's the way Parliament works.
Right, but that's not what you're doing now. Now you're attracting MPs to the party.
MPs are attracted to what we're doing.
So there's no active recruitment happening?
Premiers are attracted to what we're doing.
Right.
Premier Ford will be here tomorrow. We'll make a major announcement of cooperation. The Conservative Premier of Ontario.
I want to go back to what my question was, which was, are you comfortable getting a majority government through people crossing the floor?
I am comfortable commanding the confidence of the House of Commons and getting through the House of Commons, getting support in the House of Commons and votes, and obviously votes and support in the House of Commons for legislation that is going to protect Canadian communities, that's going to build this country, is going to make our country more independent, more sustainable, more prosperous.
Are there
That's the only excerpt that we've got as well. They haven't given us the full interview yet. Do you notice how she looks? She's got like makeup on and she's dressed up quite nicely for it. Didn't do that when she had a chat with Poilievre the other day. No. Just one of the many indications of the hierarchy, as she sees it, hierarchy of importance.
A little bit too much on the upper eyelids there, but hey. What were we to judge?
Also, the patronizing attitude. It was like, that's how it works. Last time I checked. Like, why do they let him get away with that sort of patronizing shtick? It's kind of like as if Rosemary Barton doesn't know that. Do you know what I mean? Everybody knows that. Everybody involved in politics knows that. It's just such a cheeky little thing to say, isn't it?
We should have played that in an inverse order, because she goes back to David Cochrane and they're just like, yeah, see, that's what he said. It's just he's comfortable doing it, and they're just plugging it. Like, what about the 27,000 people that voted for a blue sign that didn't vote for Michael Ma? What about the allegations that there's Chinese interference? What about, you know, like there's a lot of whatabouts there that aren't being answered. What about? And no. Danielle Smith taking a lot of heat from the CBC and Skate Canada there for her position on no transgender in skating competitions in Alberta. Pierre Poilievre has not been that vocal in this, but he comes to Danielle Smith's defense here. I haven't heard him this vocal.
He did, if you remember, a couple of years ago, he caused a bit of a storm, didn't he, when he was interviewed in the House of Commons corridors, and he said something fairly mild, but something to do with like we shouldn't give puberty blockers to kids or something like that. Like okay, like stating the obvious kind of thing. And there was a great firestorm, wasn't there, in response to that? Which just kind of, it shows you how different it is now, a couple of years later. So we're not in that world anymore, are we? And yeah, so now I guess he feels confident and emboldened enough to do that, to actually come out and say something and support Danielle Smith.
Because he's been quiet on some issues, right? Like every now and then he kind of perks up. But the Online News Act, he said some stuff and then kind of gone quiet on it too. Like there's so many things that he could definitely make noise about. But, you know, he has stood up for Danielle Smith.
Well, I would say there's a weird thing going on with Danielle Smith and Pierre Poilievre lately, as I'm sure you've observed, which is like it's almost like Danielle Smith's gone behind his back with Mark Carney, and people keep asking Pierre Poilievre. They're trying to like get between Pierre Poilievre and Danielle Smith, and he's just in this strange voice that he keeps saying like, as Danielle Smith said when she agreed with me, and it's like trying to shore up that friendship, which I just find a tad intriguing.
Here's the big one for Danielle Smith, you know, trying to get energy out to the east or west coast. And I've been saying for a while that Alberta and Saskatchewan are like the Saudi Arabia of the world. We're the next ones because of all that they have. And the big attraction to Alberta and Saskatchewan, that is energy. Saskatchewan's uranium. And then Alberta with almost everything. Alberta is the plum that gets treated like the ugly stepsister, Cinderella in waiting, because LNG, oil and gas, they have the best solar as well too. Wind, it's so windy there. They have everything. They have absolutely everything. And you know, one of the big things they have is cold weather as well. Cold weather, which reduces the cooling costs that are required for these massive data centers. And if they get data centers coming to them, they don't have to ship as much either, and still they can make money off of LNG and all that. Kevin O'Leary pitched billion-dollar data centers too in northern Alberta, and here it is. The Europeans, they're ready. 2 European businesses have agreed to build 4 new data centers in Alberta for more than $1.2 billion. Starting the pair project expects to roll out over the next couple of years in a couple of small towns, and that's big news for these small towns, right? And Danielle Smith putting in a thing in Olds and Bonnyville, right? Amazing news, getting net zero regs lifted under the MOU has resulted in 4 new data. She's saying 4 new data centers. And there you go. Lots of people starting to come, recognizing, and I said this a long time ago, these data centers are starving for power. That's the one thing holding up that China has. China recognizes energy is everything. And they've fired up, you know, Carney and liberals trying to tell you that they're leading the green revolution. Yeah, they lead in solar. Damn right they do. They lead in almost everything, but they lead in coal. They lead in SMRs. They lead in LNG. They lead in everything. They will literally, like Iain said a while back, they'll literally put 1 million people on a bicycle to generate electricity just so they can have more electricity. We're not even prepared to commit to a pipeline. That's what we're not prepared to do.
Absolutely. Well, I mean, that's obviously, we're having a laugh there. We talk about the bikes, but something that they are doing is, or have been accused of, is using what basically amounts to kind of slave labor or something, you know, serf labor or something like that when they manufacture their solar panels in Xinjiang in Western China. So yeah, they'll do anything. They will literally, they'll resort to forced labor if that's what it takes. They'll set up these little work camps, which they do for the Muslims in Western China, and they'll just get them to make solar panels. They'll do that because you know they want to win. They'll go on LinkedIn and they'll scroll through scientists' profiles and send them messages and offer them millions of dollars in bribes, or they'll send attractive women out to try and seduce scientists so they can get them into a honey trap, and then they'll bring them to China and they'll use their brains to build semiconductors or whatever. Like the Chinese will literally do anything that it takes to win. And, you know, as you rightfully say, we won't even build a pipeline, a completely innocuous thing that would be only beneficial. We won't even do that.
Maybe Danielle Smith doesn't have to dance with the devil if the data centers come there and they just start using the energy right there. Because it is the new industry, and there's no doubt about it. The new industry in the world is AI, and it's massive, and it's absolutely massive. And that's where the real opportunity lies for Canada in the critical minerals and in the energy. That's what we have. Those are the two trump cards, if you want to call them. And the cold weather helps as well. Like, I mean, this is where the northern Alberta, Yukon territories could really benefit if they can get, you know, Fort St. John to northern BC. But David Eby has said no to this stuff, right? He said he doesn't even want fintech, never mind AI data centers.
He prefers rationing. Abundance or rationing. Those are your choices, basically. He's chosen rationing. But if you look at one of the quotes here from the chief executive, Carlos Caldas, says, energy was a big, big factor. I would probably say energy might be almost the biggest factor in our decision. Of course it is. And you know, you and many other people rightly point out, the future is about how much energy you have when it comes to technologies like this. It's almost like you can't have enough. And whoever has the most energy, to a certain extent, will win. You know, that's at least one of the ingredients. But I would just say that's basically always been the case throughout history, even if it came down to like animal power, human power.
The discovery of fire.
Yeah, basically. And certainly like the Industrial Revolution, why did a tiny little country like England dominate industry for nearly 100 years? Like when you look at coal production and you look at production of finished goods like guns and pots and all sorts of things, the British were just like had more than everybody else combined. Why is that? It's literally energy, because they burned coal and they used steam to generate more energy than you could generate with like a horse or something or a water wheel. It really does boil down to energy. And the 19th century belonged to the British because of energy, you know. And to a certain extent, you could say the same thing for the United States. In the recent decades, they've just had so much energy. So do we want to sort of voluntarily lose this race to China? Because that is what will happen.
It's almost to the point of ridiculous, you know. And then one of the in the clip there, Rosemary Barton asking Carney, like, Pierre Poilievre is all about slogans. That's all I've heard from Mark Carney is slogans. It's like the guy that says he doesn't like slogans, and he spits out slogans. But here's one you can take: energy is everything. Somebody take that, because that is the equation. Here's a Liberal that got busted, and I guess if you do too much, you just can't take, there's so far you can go. But this guy, Pablo Rodriguez, has resigned.
He's given a speech, isn't he, today, where he probably is going to blame everybody else but himself. But he does have good hair, does have a good beard, so I'm sure he'll be fine. Those assets will see him far in life. But, we talked about the Online News Act earlier. He is one of the infamous handful of people from Quebec who have administered the federal government's policies on the Online News Act. And he famously threatened to cancel all, well, he did actually. He cancelled all federal government advertising with Facebook. And he estimated it was about $10 million a year. And he said, there you go, Facebook, until you let news on your platforms again, we're not going to advertise with you. Obviously, they started to do that as soon as an election came around, pretty rapidly, didn't they? They gave up on that one.
Mark Carney and the Liberals during the election spent over $5 million in 3 months. We got those numbers. And then we asked for an update, and then they said, can't give it to you. You can have it in 2026. It's odd, no? Absolutely odd. Like a ludicrous odd. But here's one thing that you can expect, and we're also on this news commentary show. We're also fortune tellers, and we're going to tell you what's going to happen in the future here. That there's a lot of talk in Carney's speeches right now about how Canada's not meeting its climate targets. It confirms it will miss those emission targets. So for the last 10 years, Justin Trudeau and the Liberals, and Mark Carney as economic advisor, have asked Canadians to sacrifice their prosperity and the economy at the altar of climate change, and they won't even come close to meeting those targets. So now they're going to do a shift. So what basically the new climate Bible is coming out, the New Testament, I guess you want to call it, whatever you want to call it, the new Bible. But let's listen into the new environment minister. She's so cheery. That's the best thing to have, is a cheery voice when they tell you, guess what's coming down the pipe. Let's listen in.
Today, we announced new methane regulations that are going to drive down emissions while also building a stronger economy. And I wanted to take a moment to talk about what this announcement is and what it means for Canada. Methane emissions are responsible for about 30% of the global rise in temperature to date, and cutting methane emissions is one of the easiest, fastest, and most cost-effective ways to rapidly reduce Canada's emissions. That's why the federal government has taken action to finalize new rules for two major sources of methane: oil and gas and landfills. For oil and gas, these regulations are establishing stronger requirements to reduce emissions, including strengthening leak detection and repair, as well as controlling venting. The methane rules we are putting in place for landfills will help ensure early detection and faster responses to stop leaks, which account for a significant share of methane emissions in Canada. This is an important step to lower our emissions and advance climate action. And it's about real benefits for Canadians by supporting innovation, driving investment, and creating good jobs. We are ensuring we have a more competitive.
That's good. We've heard this same rhetoric for 10 years. How's it working out? How has it been working out?
Yeah.
But what we're going to hear in the New Testament
domestically and globally, how's it working out?
Yeah.
Doesn't look good, does it?
What we're going to hear in the New Testament, though, is we're going to hear about CCUS, carbon capture, utilization, storage. We're going to hear about that. We're going to hear a lot about how CCUS is going to change what we do and rescue the world. CCUS, this technology that they've been touting, it's going to get all the play in the world on the CBC. It's going to tell you how great it is, how this new industry, which is basically a tax scheme. It's basically a tax scheme. We already have one of them that came into, Tim Hodgson touted it, that came from America because they said they couldn't operate anywhere in the world because nobody else is giving away the climate credits like Canada is, up to 75% on the 75 cents on the dollar. So they came to Alberta. It's called Carbon Capture USA. You can go through and you can find it, Carbon Capture USA. They come to Alberta with their technology, which is basically like some big HVAC scheme. We're going to suck air through these fans and sequester it in these filters, and then they're going to put it in trucks, truck it somewhere, and then inject it into the ground. And they're going to get 75 cents on the dollar back of their investment to do that. Pretty good. Like, where are you going to get that? And then they're going to get the ability to tax our energy industry. Energy is everything, and they're going to get the ability to tax that industry by selling them carbon credits that are going to be mandated on them, and then plus add the industrial carbon tax. So there's just going to be like a lot of people skimming our energy sector. Instead of it going to the Canadian taxpayer, reducing our tax burden, it's going to go to these private companies like Brookfield, who's invested billions and billions and billions of dollars into CCUS, which is almost like a dead investment everywhere in the world because the Americans don't want it. And Carney and them say that, the world is going to demand this. America signed deals with Japan, South Korea, and Germany for LNG. Nobody asked for CCUS.
And also the Europeans, the East Asians, obviously the Americans, they've rolled back so many of their so-called climate policies.
What people want,
pretty serious stuff as well that they've just given up on. I don't know where you get this faith from. I mean, somebody asked us, didn't they, about is Carney a religious man? I mean, Catholic. But is he? I mean, I suppose he is a Catholic, but I think he has another religion as well. He's got a side gig, hasn't he? And it's this kind of unshakable faith in the world's or political leaders' belief in these climate policies. I just don't see the evidence. We like to do a bit of prognostication now and then, don't we, on here? Can you prognosticate that? Can you see that all of a sudden, like countries like Germany, which is struggling just to survive, like the Germans are trying to think of a new economic model so that they can survive and exist as a country. Do you think they're likely to go really strict and hard on things like this and just refuse to do business with like Saudi Arabia or something like that, or China, or countries that don't have these policies?
America.
I just cannot see that. I can't see that happening.
No. And then the other thing is the conflict of interest there, because again, Brookfield has invested billions and billions of dollars, which is basically a dead investment. Because who's doing CCUS? The only place left, because America is not doing it. They got rid of all the credits. And you can go read the quote directly from Carbon Capture USA. They said their technology is not viable anywhere else now because there's no tax credits. They're living off the Canadian taxpayer. They're living off the Canadian taxpayer. And they're not adding value.
Well, because it makes no money. Yeah. It makes absolutely no money whatsoever. It's like, it's the equivalent of paying six-figure salaries to like tens of thousands of workers to, transport one pile of garbage or like some rocks from one part of a field to the other side. Like it doesn't. There is no intrinsic economic benefit to it. I mean, you could argue that it helps get money into the system or something like that from a monetarist perspective, but this is not. It's not value added, is it? Which we're told about that we need in this country. But the whole point of carbon capture as well, and even the people that have like a fond word to say for it, there aren't many, but even the people that do quite like it say it is only feasible. It's only worth having, even in the conversation, if it's universally installed. It's only if every country in the world does it. But for a completely insignificant country like Canada, to think that, we could be the only ones doing it and we could make an effect, no, that's not going to happen, obviously.
Yeah, it's disheartening when energy is everything and we seem to be squandering our prosperity. Somebody's asking how to donate. And I was just putting this in there. It's in the bottom of all of our Kelowna Now stories.
Do you want to donate to a carbon capture company? You already are. You already are doing that through your taxes.
I think they want to donate it to our work here that we're doing here. So here's a CP story. They're saying Canada needs to move from exploration to extraction. I mean, yeah, no SHIT Sherlock. Like, lots of talk, Philippe Champagne. Lots of photo ops. He's the best photo op. Look at how that nice blurred background. I used to take photos as a photographer. Nice bouquet there. That's a professional photo. Beautiful shot. That's what we get, photo ops. How about something happening, right? He's in Berlin now. Like, we could probably go find his next photo op. It's just photo op after photo op after photo op for Philippe Champagne and Melanie Jolie.
Yeah. But obviously, he's been in Europe and he's been talking to the Europeans and he said, oh, there's loads and loads of interest. I can believe that. I think that is true because they traipsed all the way across the Atlantic Ocean a couple of years ago to beg Justin Trudeau for exactly this. So obviously, there is a big market out there, particularly in Europe where they're so desperate. But he was talking about that, and that's in that context. That's when he said, but we need to move from talking about it to actually digging it up. And obviously what's happened is these Europeans have said, like, you've been talking about this a while, Mr. Champagne. Like, when are we actually going to see the goods? When is it actually going to manifest? So it's like the Liberal government is being put under more pressure about its results by random faceless Europeans in Berlin than, I don't know, the CBC or the rest of the media in this country.
Well, he's there in the UK right now, meeting with the Chancellor. I don't know if you can put that one up there. Mr. Fox, if you could put that up there. We have our own. But I mean, the photo ops are amazing. Like, that's the thing, right? How do you get
beautiful tree, that, isn't it?
Yeah, beautiful tree there in Philippe Champagne there with the she's facing a lot of heat, actually, Rachel Reeves, for her fancy footwork on that budget there.
She's looked upon as pretty much the worst Chancellor of the Exchequer, which is Finance Minister, so Champagne's counterpart. She's looked upon as the worst in recent history, at least, if not history, full stop.
You had that up there. You can put that back up. If that old saying, if I had a nickel for every time you said something, if we had a nickel for every glorious photo op that the government puts out, we would be just full of nickels, that's for sure. We would be plumb full of nickels. The beavers, there would be beavers everywhere. There would be beavers everywhere.
But also, did you read that? Did you read that tweet? It doesn't really make sense, does it? The bound between our two countries. What's he on about that?
Well, they photo op, killing it in photo ops, not so good in English. Mark Carney, not good in English either.
Very, very strange. But I would also say about Rachel Reeves, she's quite infamous in England or Britain because she faked her resume. She pretended that she worked at, I think it was the Bank of England or some big bank. She pretended that she was like an economist there for years, but she was really like a receptionist. So they call, well, not quite a receptionist, but pretty sort of low down in the organization. So they call her like a receptionist and things like that. And they also call her Rachel Thieves because of the taxes that she puts in place. So yeah, I mean, just to really hammer it home how unpopular she is. And then you've got like Francois Philippe, like, here I am with these great people.
I can tell you what happened in that tweet there. The Carney Liberals got in trouble because Mark Carney in his tweets there forgets the U in many of his tweets there about like color and, you know, like the different ones, humor. And so then probably a memo went out. We should ask Holly Doan to see if they can get the memo. A memo went out. Don't forget to put a U in everything. And he's like, the bond, you got to put a U in there. So now it's an overabundance of the U. Anyway, this one out. Federal departments begin notifying public servants of possible job cuts. Possible job cuts? What does that mean? It's bonus time in Ottawa. Bonus time. We told you, I think last week, we told you bonus time in Ottawa right now. 90 to 100% of the federal bureaucrats getting their bonus check right now. How are you doing as a Canadian? Is your bonus check coming in? Or don't forget, you're giving your tax dollars to them, the people that yesterday we covered it, that said they're not into an efficiency review. They're not into that. That doesn't go with their, they don't like that. They don't want to be efficient. They don't want to use tax dollars. They want a bonus. It's bonus time.
They don't want to be supervised. Yeah, they don't want conditions placed on their employment. And to be fair, there are really no conditions. You don't even have to go to the office. As we talked about, you don't even have to turn up and you'll still get your bonus if you complain. But what I'm very interested in, and obviously here in Ottawa, you know, you couldn't throw a stone in any direction without hitting a public servant. They're everywhere. But I haven't really had a chance to sort of take their temperature and ask them what they think about all this. Because I mean, you can just take it for granted they'll all have voted for the Liberal Party because that is their political team. That's their representation in Ottawa, in the House of Commons. But I do wonder if they have buyer's remorse now, because they were told no cuts, and they were warned that Poilievre wanted to come and slaughter the public service and you know, implement massive amounts of cuts. I just wondered, are they thinking a little bit now, like feeling a little bit of regret, or I don't know, maybe they're just thinking that they still trust the plan.
This one here from Holly Doan Blacklocks. Foreign flight by 1,000 Canada's for the first time since July of 71. It's the first time that the population shrank, and it's just slightly though. Statistics Canada said that yesterday. Analysts said the decline was due to flight of thousands of foreign students and migrant workers whose permits had expired. Estimates show the reduction in the number of non-permanent residents in Canada down $176,000 in the third quarter of 2025. And the primary reason was decrease in population over this period. Analysts wrote in a report, population estimates third quarter, every province and territory except Alberta, and none of it saw population decreases. The overall quarterly decline in population, 76,000 compared to an increase of 418 in the same period last year. Wow. That was when they were flooding Canada with people. Like, it was unprecedented, like 1.5 million in that 1 year. And what had been the biggest quarterly gain since 1957. And this is, you know, like we talked about this yesterday, and this is something to think about. When places like A&W and Tim Hortons say they can't hire people and they need more migrant workers or temporary foreign workers, that's at the expense of you. They want to save, they don't want to pay people so that, you know, young students will come in there and Canadians will come in there and work. So they want cheap labor so that you can pay for it. You can pay for it by not getting access to healthcare. You can pay for it by higher rents. You can pay for it by many things, increased taxes, all that. And you're
more congested roads as well. I mean, it just goes on and on. Every aspect of life.
You're expected to pay for that so they can show a better bottom line and better report to their shareholders so they can have an inflated stock price. Tim Hortons is a publicly traded company. They should pay for their own wages. They shouldn't be asking for what the UN, one of the UN reports come out, it was a UN organization that came out and said that Canada is teetering on modern day slavery. And then that's all they talk about. They don't talk about the effects of it, because when Mark Miller was asked about it by a reporter, what did he say? He called him a racist. This is how they silence, and we don't have like media that pushes back on it. We have government corrupted and crippled media, because they should have went after him on that question. They didn't. They didn't go after him on that question. What we hear is how, you know, like A&W and Tim Hortons, nobody will do that job. Just pay more. there's definitely an inflection point where somebody says, yeah, I'll do the Tim Hortons job for whatever money. You know what I mean? Like, keep raising the rate. It's called.
And it's not like they talk about it as if it's like the worst job in history or something like that. It's not that bad, is it? In a nice warm place, you're cooking food, speaking to people, like it's not the worst job in the world. You don't need to like bring in hundreds of thousands or millions of people from random parts of the world to do that kind of job, do you? And even if you do, let's pretend that it is the worst job ever, and you do need to bring in foreigners to do it, then why don't we just stop having those restaurants? Full stop. Let's just get rid of that then. You know, why don't we choose not having Tim Hortons over millions of random people coming into Canada? You know,
the healthcare.
These questions just never asked. And I think you're right to point out that a lot of it is down to the lack of curiosity on the part of our media. They don't even, the questions like this don't even enter their head. You know, it's not for them.
And there's no shortage of temporary foreign workers still here. Stats Canada yesterday calculated, even with the reduction in quotas, there's still almost 3 million foreigners remain in Canada on temporary permits, including students and migrant workers. We should not be sacrificing Canadian healthcare and the rents and everything, and young people that can't afford a house. It's driven up so cost of everything so that Tim Hortons and A&W can get cheaper labor. Raise your prices. Look at your stock charts. Just look at Tim Hortons and that. Like, why should Canadians subsidize fast food joints? How do they have the ear? And there was talk that basically the Tim Hortons is using Canada as the federal MPs as their HR department. They are lobbying them nonstop.
Yeah. But it's another thing that they're never told to do, or they never pledged to do, is, you know, if it's too expensive to produce and sell your product at a price that the market will tolerate, what do you do in that situation? You either go bankrupt, you quit, you acknowledge that you're not good enough, you can't do it, or you innovate and you think of new ways to produce your product more efficiently, cheaper. You know, that's all businesses have to do this. It's like, this is like business 101. And these masters of business here who walk around in like beautiful $7,000 suits and the rest of it and get millions of dollars because they're such expert business people, they can't do that. They don't even understand that. They can't compete on the most basic level. So yeah, I mean, it is astonishing. Although then again, you could argue they are competing, but they're just competing at an extremely high level where they literally just go and say what needs to be said to the politicians and get what they want. That's a much easier way of doing it rather than having to actually work and innovate.
And the rhetoric from the politicians and the media, the government corrupted and crippled media, is that nobody else will do this work, so that's why we need it. That's it, full stop. Don't look at anything else. Don't look at what it's done to healthcare. Don't look at what it's done to rent. Don't look at what it's done to our youth here, accessing schools even. Remember that? That's Contescacoga. What's the name of that town? Contesca. Contescacoga.
Yeah, Conestoga.
The dean there, the president there, makes over $600,000 a year, and he was the biggest abuser of foreign students, the biggest abuser. And then he said, "Oh, you know, it's just not about a money thing." Yet it was the biggest increase in their budget ever. And that's what it means. At the expense of who? So elitist policies, liberal policies, at the expense of the many, for the benefit of the few. Just stop going to A&W. Stop going to Tim Hortons till they hire Canadians there instead of bringing in temporary foreign workers. It's ridiculous. They'll learn their lesson. Stop frequenting them. They're the ones costing you access to healthcare. And here it is, another one from Holly and Blacklocks. A York University researcher assigned to work on pro-Palestinian reports at taxpayers' expense called Canada a racist settler colonial state. We're paying for this. We're paying for this. We're literally paying for this to get our country. And it's absolutely, and this is the one that they secretly wouldn't tell us that they were funding. Remember, we talked about this story yesterday. They wouldn't tell us that they were paying it. And that's Cabinet Advisor Amiria Elgoway met personally with the author and approved the assignment. But yesterday, guess what, when she was asked about it? Guess what her comment was? No comment. Imagine that. No comment. And then she
Sorry, I'm
did.
just I'm investigating quickly this guy because I have to feel an obligation to just have a little peeky. But I'm inclined to say that if this guy is a migrant, if he's here as a at His Majesty's pleasure, and he's referred to Canada as those things, those slurs, racist, settler, colonial state, you just have to ask, why? Why does it please His Majesty to keep such a person here? Wouldn't you just get rid of somebody like that? Like, is that not the most obvious thing in the world? Somebody hates your country, they're not from your country. Kick them out of your country. That's like kind of obvious.
You got a thank you letter, though. Thank you for doing your work. And that was from Amiria Elgiboué to Solomon Khan at the University's Islamophobia Research Hub. The research was critical that Canada is a racist, settler, colonial state. We're paying for that. We're paying for that. We're paying for tearing down our nation, tearing it apart. We're paying for that.
But this is the thing. This is the kind of extremism and hatred and bigotry that the parties of the left in Canada and elsewhere have flirted with and embraced and endorsed for so long now, decades. So this rot, it runs pretty deep. And we have these people are often just outright racists. They're bigots. They're really unpleasant people who seem to be able to do nothing but spread hatred, particularly of the country that they're in and the people who are hosting them. That's something, isn't it? Like, we're so well attuned to when the right does that kind of thing. It just becomes a story everywhere, doesn't it? Like if Pierre Poilievre walks a piece of graffiti that is associated with some nasty evil group or something like that was a news story. Do you remember? For like 2 weeks, that was like the headline news. But then when parties of the left embrace this kind of sickness and ugliness, it's only Holly Dawn, as usual. I mean, another one of his lines here, this Europeanness and whiteness remains central to the project of multiculturalism, using those terms almost as slurs.
No.
Why would anybody tolerate this kind of thing?
Access to information, this is from Holly Dawn, the records indicate Khan and Elgiboué exchanged several emails, and she said in her 2023 appointment as cabinets, guess how much she makes? Guess how much she makes from our tax dollars? $191,000 a year as special representative on combating Islamophobia. Nice. And she'll get a bonus. Meanwhile, you can't afford beef. You're paying for this. You're literally paying for this.
So according to Google's, I don't know how correct this is, but it thinks that chap is from South Asia. So if that, and came to Canada as an international student in 2003, as I say, according to this. If that's true, why? I would not expect, as somebody who wasn't born in Canada, I would not expect to be allowed to stay here, even though I'm a citizen, if I devoted my life to attacking Canada and calling it a racist country and trying to undermine the basic sort of foundation of this country. Why would I? Why would I expect to stay here? But on the contrary, this chap gets
paid,
gold-plated contracts and all the rest of it, invited to give out advice that'll go up right to the top level of government.
And this isn't the only
remarkable.
One. Remember that anti-hate network, and who did they target? Do you know what I mean? Like, we were funding them to massive dollars, and Stephen Guilbeault finally said that wasn't right. But that was after funneling, hundreds of thousands of dollars into that organization. But look at this. One more from Holly Dawn. Employees at the Canadian Food Inspection Agency, that's the ones with the ostriches there, the CFIA, ran up nearly $17,000 in traffic tickets, records show. Bad drivers are told to cover fines out of pocket, though other federal agencies charge taxpayers for the infractions, from photo radar to parking and towing. Who cares? You're a Fed. You do whatever you want. Why should you pay? Cabinet and Inquiry Ministry accounted for almost 17,000 for speeding and red light running by meat inspectors and other employees with the, I mean, they're on the job, I guess. Employees were ticketed by the traffic police nationwide from Vancouver to Quebec. And then we did that, I don't know if we did that story, but I remember Blacklocks did it. It was that the CFAA says they can only really handle one thing at a time. You know, they were distracted, they said, with the ostrich thing for quite a while. Distracted.
Oh, it's a hard job.
Remember when Chrystia Freeland was busted? She said she only rode a bike, but then she rented a car in Grand Prairie, and I think she was going way, way over the speed limit. Because, again, she probably said, do you know who I am? Do you know who I am? I can guarantee she's not getting...
Yeah, I wish there's a body cam video of that.
But here's the thing. This is the important thing. Where are these stories on CBC? Why are the independent media outlets saying, why do we, you know, we do tons of stuff that the CBC doesn't cover? Like, and yet the funding is directed to one place. Like, they're literally have their face in the trough, feasting at it. When they got their $150 million raise, which was a campaign promise, by the way, I think one of the few that's been met. That is one of the few campaign promises that have been met by Mark Carney. I think only one actually has been met. If we go through that list of things that he's promised, because there's no pipeline, there's no housing. We're going to build 500,000 homes a year. The PBO's office says you're lucky if you get 26,000 in 5 years, not, you know, an additional 250,000 a year. So that's not met. These
even
projects,
that tax break.
Yeah.
The policy that they stole off the Conservatives and watered down, the tax break for new buyers, that hasn't even been implemented yet. I was reading about that in Steve's excellent story on Kelowna's high unemployment rate, and people in the construction industry in Kelowna are saying that isn't even in place. You know, we like even the tiniest little scraps of assistance haven't been implemented, haven't been offered. And
the GST on first-time home buyers on homes hasn't been implemented too. It's actually stopped people from buying homes because they're waiting for it. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's all paused. It's absolutely ridiculous. But the one thing that has been met, they carved that check almost immediately to the CBC. They carved that check. And how do we know that? Because the CBC immediately, the executive team gave themselves a bonus. Not a bonus, sorry, I shouldn't say it. They said they gave themselves a raise because they didn't like, you know, like, because there's too much pushback on bonus. So they just added the bonus to their pay. Ridiculous. Here's one more. Federal judges have faulted the Department of Indigenous Services for dismissing appeals to fix First Nations housing so substandard it made school children ill. The Federal Court of Appeal ruling followed Minister Mandy Gull Masty's pledge to deliver proper care for children. At the heart of this appeal are two school-age First Nations girls who suffer from poorly controlled moderate to severe asthma. And the girls' grandmother repeatedly petitioned the department to repair their family home in Oneida First Nation in Ontario. There, evidence showed the home had significant mold contamination, rotting insulation, and cracked foundation. Federal lawyers acknowledged the home was in poor repair with mold on the ceiling and walls. Well, join the Canadian military. That's the auditor went in there and looked at 7 of 14 housing for military. Unsafe drinking water, no flushing toilets, and deteriorating walls. This is what they're doing for you, and this is what with First Nations, right? But bonuses for everybody. Bonuses for everybody. That works there. Hey, not so much in getting stuff done. Again, this story is likely going to be right at the top there at the CBC. I'm sure it will be when we go to look.
And we have to remember as well that this is the party, self-described part of reconciliation and Indigenous people and all the rest of it. Like they present themselves as the only defender of these people. Like that, it's like nobody else can be trusted. Every day, every week is a story like this. It's just this disconnect between what's said and what's actually done. You know, it's the gap is just, it's too large now, isn't it? Too noticeable.
Do you remember that one town hall that Justin Trudeau, and I good credit Justin Trudeau, he did do town halls. Mark Carney hasn't done any town halls where you can just ask questions. He did town hall, and then a veteran asked for a wheelchair. And Justin Trudeau's answer is just famous, where he said, we just don't have money for that right now. But there was money to send millions of dollars to Vietnam for gender equity, climate rice, millions of dollars to the whole. Like, I mean, it's just we could go on and on and on. You can watch back the show. It's just money for that. No money for a veteran for a wheelchair. No money to fix this mold. No money for the Canadian military. Underfunded, under-equipped, underpaid, under. And we have equipment. We're going to get to some stuff for the military here in a bit. But I wanted to put this in again because we played it yesterday. But the City of Delta reports that CBSA checks less than 1% of container traffic coming through regional ports. And this reporter calls them out from Global there on, like, I don't have any specifics. And McKinnon there says, oh, well, we're not going to share any of the stuff we're doing. Yeah, because it's nothing, as usual. Nothing. Nothing, right? 1%. And yet, $750 million has been earmarked for a gun grab in Canada. That so far, what, Alberta, Saskatchewan, and I think the territories have said, can't remember if the territories, the Yukon have said, no way, not doing it. And they spent $50 million on this already and have collected 0 guns. Yet, they could spend the money on inspections at the ports. That's one of the concerns that the Americans keep raising as well. Like, Canada's got this huge leak. I've interviewed a MLA here in BC who was a former RCMP officer. That's where the guns are coming in. Guns and drugs coming through CCANs that aren't inspected. It's just so, and they're sending it through Canada Post. Clowns, absolute clowns. But hey, and here's what the Russians are doing though. They deployed an entire nuclear fleet, icebreaker fleet in the Arctic. How many nuclear icebreakers do we have? Off the top of your head, anybody?
0.
Lightning rod? Is lightning rod there? How many nuclear icebreakers do we have? Just anybody with a guess? Yeah, none. And how many are we even talking about getting? Yep, that's none again. And then, you know, in the Arctic, you need powerful subs to surface up there too. Diesel subs aren't going to cut it up there, right? That's why the Americans are up there patrolling our waters. You seen a nuclear sub surface right through the ice, just punch its way through?
Same with all like aircraft carriers as well. Like ships, quite long ago, a good few decades ago, moved over to nuclear power for the most serious hardware. Yeah. It's not like it's brand new technology, in other words. So it is curious, isn't it, that we don't want to use that technology.
And from my memory, I think I asked you this question: how often do you have to refuel a American aircraft carrier, a nuclear one?
Yeah, was it 10 years, 20 years or something?
It was in the decades, yes. Yeah. But hey, we're going to buy new subs, apparently. We're going to hand wring and talk about it forever. We're going to buy some subs, but we're buying diesel. I think they're diesel/electric because, you know, I like to make noise when we're in the water.
You'd think that just for the whales, if anything, that they would try and keep it as quiet as possible.
Yeah. Where's that diesel emissions going when you're putting around out there in the ocean with diesel? They're worried about climate change. They're putting the diesel exhaust somewhere, are they not? Where does the diesel exhaust go? Are they sailors drinking it or what? Actually, the interesting thing about this is really important, and I've said this in the past. If you go from the top of the globe, like trade, that is the most powerful trade corridor in the world at the top. Short, and the Russians say they're going to keep it open. That's part of their fleet up there. They're going to keep plowing to keep that trade corridor open for their ships. That gives a huge advantage to the Russians in moving their material around the world. And that's why that little corridor we talked about in the Bering Strait there, it's only like 58 miles between Alaska and Siberia, that you know, the Russians have asked Elon Musk to drill a tunnel for them with the Boring Company. That is the most economic. Otherwise, you're going all the way around to the Panama Canal, like all the way down and all the way up. The Arctic Circle, if they can keep that open, there's a really good video on there. I think the guy's name is Jack, and he does a lot of Canadian videos, and it explains how important that trade route is. Canada, no plans for nuclear icebreakers. They rely on the Americans, yet we stick sticks in their eyes as well, because we're not serious. We're not serious about what we're talking about. We got something more interesting here. People are, like, because there's shrinkflation or all these things, when you're talking about prices of foods, like they kept the price the same. This is from the food professor. Like the bag of chips has got, like cereal, the boxes just got smaller, right? So they don't notice the price increase as much. But now people are complaining about Kraft singles and say it all sticks to that. And he said sometimes it's just, quality, like shrinkflation too. Like quality has been getting worse as they try to cut costs too, right? That's the next slide there. Kraft single is one of my favorites. I did an interview yesterday.
So horrible, isn't it, shrinkflation? You'd think that there'd be some kind of law that, like some consumer protection law that forces these companies to say that they've shrunk the product. It's like the all new, smaller slice of cheese. But I've seen it. My kids absolutely love Pedialyte Freezies, which is they're like electrolytes, which is quite an interesting thing for them to like. But they've shrunk that. It must be about like 50% or more. They've shrunk their little freezy.
Yeah,
It's
I got a little
tragic.
A little thing for you for the cereal lovers. I don't eat cereal because it's basically sugar and wheat. But so if you take the cereal box and crush it down into a powder, and if the box is like say that big, if you look at the bottom of it, it's probably going to be that much if you crush it down. You're basically buying a box of air, right? It's so expensive too. And it's probably not that good for you. Eggs, eat eggs. I did an interview yesterday. I do lots with Dennis Storshuk. He does Kelowna Stands with Ukraine. And there's a fundraiser there in that video if you go watch it, because there's a big Ukrainian event here happening in Kelowna where you can try all the Ukrainian foods and all that. But he arranged for 3 people from Ukraine to come on. It was kind of like, I didn't even know what was going on. There was 3 people came on. I thought it was supposed to be 1 person that came on. There's this Dirty P, the guy with the beard there. On the top, the bald guy, Dirty P, he's a ex-Canadian military guy that's over there fighting as a volunteer. He was on for the lost contact. So I asked him how many Canadians were in the group that he was in. He said there was about 8 Canadians fighting there. And he brought his remains of his friend home, who died in Ukraine, but he's back there. He was in Kiev when I was talking to him. And then in the bottom corner there, that's Rachel. And she was in the Czech Republic, and she was just heading back to Ukraine. But the one that we talked the most, because we lost her connection, the one that we talked the most there is Yulia there in the top left, a young law student. She's currently going through for her law degree. And she shared some things that we were just asking how life was like there. And she says they get alarms will go off in Kiev, and you get an alarm on her phone, and then she listens, and if it's an Iranian drone, she can tell by the whatever, you can go watch the video, you can tell by the noise that it's an Iranian drone. She just goes back to sleep and takes the chances like winning the lottery, whether or not her house gets hit or not. And then, or if it's a Russian missile, which will make a loud whistling noise, and she knows those ones are very devastating, and she'll go downstairs to find some cover. But she said a lot of people will go into the subway and that to find cover. And she did share quite a few reflections. So if you're interested, you can go listen to what these people had to say about what life is like right now in Kiev.
Pretty amazing scoop to get a Canadian volunteer fighting in Ukraine, though. I mean, you don't get interviews like that every day. So, nor do you get interviews with people in Kiev either. So,
and then
that's a pretty good one.
What I said to Dennis was that, let's try to get one at a time, because it got really confusing. And so I said, one at a time, because I asked him and then he got me so many at once. So we're going to try and set one up for, I think, next week. And we're going to try and do this more organized. But anyway, it's a good interview to go watch. There's some good insights there. This young girl sharing just how they've gotten used to it, how it is, and sad. Let's move over to some BC news, though.
From the Now Media Newsroom.
People are getting tired of Mr. Eby. David Eby is on the ropes, and I was at an event last night, too. I was asked to go to an event that it was a political event. I was there and with a lot of handshaking, kind of a Christmas event there. And a lot of the people that would be typically very strong NDP supporters were saying David Eby has to go. And that's what I said earlier, is that I think the NDP party itself is likely looking around and looking for a sacrificial lamb so that they can get out of this, and they're likely going to throw Eby. We saw things come in threes. We saw John Rustad tossed by his party. The board of directors tossed John Rustad, even though John Rustad said, hell no, I won't go. Eventually went. One BC cratered, and it was the board of directors that tossed Dallas Brody. We're going to have a little bit on Dallas Brody here in a bit. And does David Eby get tossed? Does the things come in threes? Is David Eby on the ropes? Because most of the British Columbians now have had enough. And the cost of living inflation, say that for the most part, it's a very, not just, you know what I mean? Like, poor job, very poor job. Like, there's the majority of people say it's a very, very poor to poor job. There's very few undecided in there now, right? And very few
Very
good.
surprised to see that the economy was the best one. It's still bad, but that was the best. I'm wondering who those people are, but
the majority of people are basically saying there's very few that are saying that he's doing a good job. Like that, those numbers are very, very low. Basically non-existent. Look at those bars. How many are in the very good job? Like almost non-existent. They're just a little.
Yeah, you can't see it, really, can you? Yeah.
Can you put that up, or you're ready to go? There you go. Again, if we just had a bigger budget, hey, we could have. Yeah. So I mean, it's. I think, you know, like for the most point, as bad as the NDP is, though, still the Conservatives need to find a leader that strikes some confidence in British Columbians. That's going on right now. But David Eby, let's play a little clip from him here.
You were Attorney General when the Interpretation Act was brought in. Your government closed debate on that amendment. A lot of critics say you're personally responsible for a lot of the crisis with property rights and in Aboriginal issues in this province. How do you respond to those criticisms?
Well, I mean, that's obvious nonsense. The issue around Indigenous land claims, Section 35 of the Constitution, has been an issue in British Columbia for a long time. As a province that was settled without treaties, the Chilcotin decision, which was concluded in 2014, before we formed government, established for the first time a First Nations title over a massive swath of central British Columbia. We just marked the 10-year anniversary of that court decision. So the idea that Indigenous issues have just shown up in this province, I don't know who told you that, but that's not true. What is true is that our government has really tried to get away from courts and to focus on agreements. Because when you go to court, you get unpredictable outcomes. And I think that the last couple months have been a really good example of our anxiety about trying to stay out of court and trying to reach resolution at the table. The issues that private property owners face in Richmond, for example, came because we weren't able to get resolution outside of the court process with the Cowichan First Nations. And that was complicated case involving 3 different First Nations that did not agree with each other about the direction forward. So these are hard and challenging issues. I don't pretend they're easy. And as a result of the decisions that we've seen recently, we're going to have to go and amend the Declaration of the Rights of Indigenous Peoples Act, as well as the Interpretation Act, to make it clear what we meant to do with that legislation, which was to set up a schedule and a plan with First Nations on how we were going to work through this in a systemic way, recognizing that courts are not serving the interests of British Columbians in terms of predictability around this. And in fact, courts have told us that. They said, don't show up in court here, because we're just going to send you back to the table. Try to work it out between yourselves. That's what we're trying to do. It's working in many places in the province. You can see the major investments that are built on the stability of First Nations agreements and rely on the stability of those agreements. But there are challenges, and we're going to address those challenges. We're going to protect private property. We're going to ensure it's British Columbia.
Good. I do have another interview slated with Jeffrey Moyse. He has 33 years in Aboriginal law. David Eby trying to blame somebody else for this hole that has been dug with this strip of legislation. Almost everybody now saying that it needs to be repealed. Yet David Eby won't recall legislature to get this done. he says he needs more time. But then this is from the Vancouver Sun, one of the reporters there putting this out there too. This is like, he's being attacked everywhere. Just remembering to put this placeholder, the BC NDP have increased the size of public service by almost 50% since taking office in 2017. We've seen that. The private sector in British Columbia shrinking, public sector bloating, right? And then some of the consultants here have been paid hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars, and in many areas that the ministries have just been utter failures as well, including Interior Health and other health authorities here in British Columbia.
Just want to highlight what he said there, where he said, this is not easy. It's not an easy thing. If that's true, then why did you make it seem easy and simple during, for example, the debate with John Rustad, when John Rustad brought up this very point, and also during the campaign, and David Eby said, that's a load of nonsense. He's just fear-mongering. It's like, no, that's not how it works. You know, obviously, he deceived the people, didn't he? He wasn't telling the truth there, and I don't think he was behaving responsibly there. So that's not going to go away, is it? People are always going to be upset about that. But the thing that I would object to is where he talks about it, as is often the case with a lot of politicians, particularly weak politicians. They talk about laws as if they've been brought to them by Moses, and it's like, there's the tablet. This is the law. We just have to figure out a way to kind of live with this law, with this situation. He's in power. He's the premier. He's basically like the prime minister of British Columbia. Why doesn't he just change the law? But again, it's like this lack of ambition. It's almost like this, I don't know, they don't seem to realize that they're in power. They could change things. They can just do things, as the meme has it. So if this is not working for British Columbia, which I think everybody admits is the case, then change the law. And it doesn't just mean a little bit around the edges with the dripper. Change lots of laws in big ways. Make it all better. Make it all nice. And then then you can't blame the courts anymore, because it's the job of the courts to look at the laws. They look at the legislation, they enforce that legislation.
Yeah.
That's what they do. They don't invent laws. They're looking at the laws that you've created and put on the statute books. So I just find it so tiresome. It's a little bit like that clip we had of wasn't it McKinnon talking about how the bureaucracy is like bloated and too many regulations. It's like, you're in control. Change it. You know, and it's like he's the driver of the car and he's complaining like, God, this car's gone way. It's like, all right, mate. Well, use your right foot there.
And here's another one that is boiling over for the EB government: crime and safety here in British Columbia, and right now they're seeing some good stuff because they're starting to hold people. The repeat offenders, the pride in more BC News. The province has announced discovery of a phenomenon that nobody could have possibly predicted. Is keeping violent offenders in custody prevents them from committing more crimes. They've seen a 50% decline in police interactions involving such offenders since the new program started in May of 23. A similar pilot program is trialed in Kelowna, Nelson, and Nanaimo. Who would have thought? Who would have thought, right? Keeping criminals, violent criminals in jail would have helped. For those that are new to the show here, I was just in Tokyo and Osaka for 10 days, walked around there because I get up early, walked around there at 3 in the morning by myself in a strange city, the world's largest city, with no fear. I would not do that in Kelowna. And I was at that political event last night, and I said that to all the politicians that were there. I said, would you walk around in Kelowna at 3 o'clock in the morning? And to a person, absolutely not. They're the ones in charge too. They could change things. And yet they're like blaming somebody else. Like who's to blame? Japan figured it out. There's a way.
Well, apparently they have as well. It's like, this just proves the point. Yeah. You know, that meme, I love that meme so much, which is, you can just do things. perfect meme for our times, because so many people in power need to be told that, don't they? You can literally just do things. You can literally just keep repeat violent offenders in detention. You can keep them in custody pending a trial, pending a court case. You can literally just do that. And when you do it, crime will fall. It's literally that simple. I mean, sociologists, all the credentialed people out there, long ago they figured out that a very small percentage of any given population commits the majority of the crime. We're now seeing that in very stark terms, aren't we? You can't ignore that reality now. Why wouldn't you focus on those people and do anything that you could possibly do to separate them from the rest of society? It's just a no-brainer. And that is what they've done in places like Japan. I mean, it's a little bit more complicated in Japan. It's like more to do with their culture as well. But, you know, that's a start, isn't it? Put the most violent people in society away from us. Hide them away from us.
James gave you a compliment and also asked, I think he's going to even make a donation there. He says if he's turned up late to find Iain in a suit, if he promises to show up tomorrow on time, will he get a shave? Look at that, hey?
Then what's next? Haircut? Give it a rest, lads.
I love the suit, though. Definitely, like Between Two Ties. That's the name of our new show, I guess, eh? But David Eby he doesn't look good, though, and this is somebody put out, it's kind of like a meme, a sad sack, but David Eby looks troubled. He's got a young family. I've interviewed David. He seems like a really nice guy, but I think he's run out of ideas. I do have Ravi Parmar on tomorrow. We're going to talk forestry, because forestry in BC has been in shambles for a while.
He also seems like quite a nice guy. But, you know, like I was saying yesterday about Keir Starmer, he also seemed like a nice man. The truth is, you know, that's why it's a bit rough, isn't it? A bit harsh when their personalities and stuff like that, because you have to admit that there's probably a pretty high chance that they're decent people. Yeah. And I think with David Eby, other than his like sanctimoniousness, which I find insufferable, but that's kind of part of the uniform if you live in Vancouver. Other than that, he does seem all right. He just seems like a normal guy, but he definitely like dangerously out of his depth. I don't think he knows what he's doing, and I felt like that for quite a while now.
They've run out of ideas.
So that sentiment here in this tweet, I certainly agree with.
And Denise, a regular listener, says it's minus 20 in Peace River today. I've lived in that area. High level. High level is like it has like the territory weather. You get Peace River, you kind of have Edmonton weather, and then you go north of Peace River to Manning into high level, and you're just like, what happened, right? But high level, God's country. Only God and people that love the Northern Lights live there. Eleanor Sturko, another pot on David Eby's stovetop that is frothing. BC's mental health and addiction crisis continues to get worse under 8 years, and this decriminalization was just a huge mistake. And even David Eby has admitted that himself now. But BC's first addiction minister says merger back into health ministry was an error. I mean, they made such a mess with this. It's such a mess, this decriminalization. Our streets, again, in Tokyo, the largest city in the world, nothing, no homelessness on the streets that I saw. And no drugs, super clean, and there's no garbage cans. Like if you have garbage and you want to put it somewhere, like there's no place to put garbage. They're just basically saying it's your garbage. Take it with you. Take it with you.
And they do.
Yeah, and if you put it down on the ground, they're probably going to take you with the garbage somewhere. Kelowna has the highest unemployment rate, and the question is why. So our own Steve McDonald went out there and asked the question. And he asked Renee Merrifield, who I do Beyond the Ballot with every week, one of the better shows, one of the better political commentary shows on the internet, help us discover that one as well. And also Cassia DeVere, I did an interview with her recently as well. She's the head, one of the executives at the CHBCAO, Canadian Home Builders here in the central Okanagan. And anyway, they say it's staggering, dire, and worse than the 08-09 recession when housing was just crazy here. And it says Kelowna has that ultra high unemployment rate of 11%, and the construction collapse is most of it. And And I said that quite a while ago when I was talking to the NDP and then saying, like, the cranes are coming down in BC or in Kelowna. The cranes are coming down in Kelowna and they're not going back up. Part of it to do with your Airbnb policy, part of it to do with a whole bunch of things, but you're killing Kelowna. And, and they say the same thing. The number of layoffs in construction now staggering. And first time in 25 years in this industry, I'm seeing projects canceled after the developer launched and took deposit. They're pulling out, giving deposit back and canceling. And that's from Renee Merrifield. And I've heard that too. And Devere says she's seeing it too. That's a lot of dire news. Builders from Alberta who had satellite operations in the Okanagan have closed up here. And this has to do with the DRIPA rules too, or the land, like the, like nobody knows. Like people just don't want to invest right now. The number of people with jobs in Kelowna dropped from 133,900 in October to 131 in November. In 2022, when residential construction was booming, and it was a large economic driver in Kelowna with $2.5 billion in annual project impact. Kelowna, I mean, a lot of the boom in Kelowna was construction, absolutely. And when they did the Airbnb policy, that was basically it. You know what I mean? It just went dead like overnight. Like, there was projects sitting there that they couldn't sell, and it forced a lot of stuff onto the market. And I interviewed the head of Airbnb Canada because Brenda Bailey said that this Airbnb policy, that these people, they own like 20, 25, and they should be running a hotel. And that's not the case according to the Airbnb. They said that most Airbnbs in Canada, 90% of them, they have one Airbnb. It's a person that has an investment property or is just trying to make a little extra money. My son happened to have one, and that's the only way he could afford it, is he would rent out his place during the summer months, like the 4 months, and then he would move home during that time, and then so that he could afford to pay for his place. So they did that one policy fits all. And even the candidate that ran here, and I interviewed Loyal Wooldridge on this show after the show when he said there should be a made in Kelowna solution. After the show, obviously the NDP was watching the show, he got a call and he got smacked around for it. And
they're adamant, aren't they? They're so certain about this policy.
They want to die on certain hills, and this is now showing up in the highest unemployment rate here in Kelowna. This is the policies, right, put in place. Dallas Brody says she expects to find out today whether she gets the party or if Tara Armstrong gets the party. I don't know, I guess, does it matter who gets it? Do you know what I mean? Like scrapping over, you know what I mean? Like they've made a mess of it, really. You know what I mean?
And had quite a lot of support, quite a lot of goodwill, and a lot of enthusiasm for what they were doing and saying. It clearly catered to a set of the electorate, but
and then
just like the BC Conservatives,
someone made a comment
to pieces.
Someone made a comment on the Airbnb, and I get that. Like in the houses, they should have. Like a lot of there was illegal Airbnbs. They should have been like there is like I think 7 or 9 like that were sold and zoned as Airbnbs that were towers that should be kept as Airbnbs. The ones that were in houses and that are in residential areas, not so much, right? Because that's what it is. Some of these houses are renting out and there's drunk, naked people partying all night. Yeah, and I can see why people would be angry that if you have a family next door and that's happening, and but if they're responsible, then that's different.
And Airbnb has like pretty strict rules on stuff like that, so you probably grasp them in.
We got some international news for you, and we got a lot of good stuff in here. This is the really good stuff, meaty stuff in here. You're gonna love it, and stick around for it because I promise there'll be some good stuff in here.
Live from the Now Media Newsroom.
Donald Trump did a address the nation last night, and it wasn't that long. I watched it. Did you watch it at all? It's 18 minutes or so.
It was not a primetime address. It was definitely not a primetime address. It was just a campaign event, and I was quite. I was insulted that he got me to tune in.
Tucker Carlson billed it as he was going to declare war on Venezuela. None of that happened in there. But there is a little piece here from Newt Gingrich, And he liked it, though. So let's listen to what Newt had to say.
To watch President Trump give a 19-minute disciplined speech that covered that many facts was worthy of Ronald Reagan. That was a good speech. It was an important speech. Someday people will say it was one of the most important speeches of his career because it set the table for the entire debate over the next year and laid out what Biden did to make the country a disaster, what Trump has already done, and where we are going in general, and why that's the right direction. I think it's a very, very important speech.
It was more of a campaign speech, and he was laying it out really as to what's been accomplished. You know, it's been a year, so you know, not to be unexpected. But here's one more little clip here we'll play here on he lays out some of the stuff that, according to Mr. President there, Donald Trump, that he's accomplished. Let's play that clip here.
Just passed one big, beautiful bill. Tonight, I am also proud to announce that more than 1,450,000, think of this, 1,450,000 military service members will receive a special, we call Warrior Dividend before Christmas, a Warrior Dividend. In honor of our nation's founding in 1776, we are sending every soldier 1,776.
That's good. I thought it was a different clip, but you know, he also touted $18 trillion in investment, jobs, wage increase, growth, factories, and then you know, like he talked about obviously they're getting ready for the midterms. He says in the Biden administration, car prices rose 22%, 30%, all that stuff, and I mean, he didn't repeat himself a ton in there. That's one thing. Like, you know, usually he repeats himself a lot. He did not repeat himself a ton. It was more like he kind of stayed on topic. That dividend that he's talking about relates to their independence, 1776, and it is tax-free. And there's lots of reaction from American military right now. It's a lot of money when you add up that there's 1.5 million military in the United States. And a lot of the military has reacted and said just before Christmas, 1776 is a lot of money, tax-free. I mean, Francois Philippe Champagne gets excited because he's giving you $11 for a year, right? Not tax-free. And then, you know, that, to be fair, it's about $250 for the average Canadian a year, not tax-free. That's what, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, I mean, if the Carney Liberals were handing out 1776 tax-free, they would be dancing in the street.
1867, maybe they would hand out. It is a bit gimmicky though, isn't it? And he has been attacked on those grounds. Some people are saying as well that it's like a dangerous thing to do. It's you know, like scary that he's trying to like bribe the military or something so that they support him for his inevitable coup that he's going to try and pull off.
That's ridiculous. But, that's ridiculous.
The idea that
like, they have to obey him. He is the commander-in-chief, right? Do you know what I mean? Like,
but also many other governments in American history have given bonuses to the military. You know, it's like not unheard of to give a bonus to
there is a promise
the military.
There is a promise of giving the taxpayers, I think, $2,000 come April. They're talking about giving all taxpayers $2,000, and they're also that they're giving children a $1,000 seed account into an investment account, which is one thing that Canadians should adopt. It is probably one of the best things I've seen as an accountant. That is amazing. Teaching children financial literacy, allowing that to grow tax-free as well. That is absolutely amazing. And why not do that in Canada? That is like there's a plum sitting there. Just take it. But numbers reported today, and let's listen to CNN. They're usually not big supporters of Donald J. Trump. Let's listen to what they say about the numbers. The tale of two nations, definitely going the right way down there.
It was a better number than anyone was expecting. Look, inflation's been very high. Mm-hmm. It's stayed high. It has not been coming down. But, you know, people were expecting it to be above 3%. It was well below 3%. I mean, I think the president will take this as good news. The investors will think that interest rates will get cut more. So, you know, it was a positive news. There's no other way to spin it.
Let's look at this next one here, CNBC.
The number of the morning, the CPI, maybe coming in a little bit better than expected. 2.7%, a little light here. I'm just reading the headlines here. Year over year, 2.7. Ex-food and energy core, 2.6. So 0.4 off. That is a very good number here. And it really, I have not looked at the internals. I'll look at them now, but it suggests that the internals are good as well. Let's see, year over year, over the last 12 months. There is no month to month, but some guys will be able to calculate. Seasonally adjusted index for all items less food and energy rose.
That's good. So, I mean, the numbers came in really well. The stock market's reacted well to it. I mean, the stock market at record highs already, but they're talking about an interest rate cut. We've done stories on it. The gasoline prices dropping across America, all over the place. They talked about that a lot yesterday. Prices on average in some states now below $2 a gallon. And but we forgot to do this, but we're going to do it right now. But let's go take a look at our friends at CBC. Let's see what they're covering today. See what is on their agenda. See what they want to talk about. Because we talked about a lot of things that are pretty shocking that you would think the CBC would cover. But they got a blizzard in Manitoba. Canadian, I don't know. They finally clued in on this. Venezuelan crude could shake up things for Canadian producers. They finally understand that. I don't know. Where's the thing on the funding of like that that Canada is a colonialist, racist nation? Where's that?
Yeah, I'm not saying it.
I didn't see it.
But they do have an analysis story, which is there a wrong way to gain a parliamentary majority? And I would suggest that is, running cover for the Prime Minister a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, again, if you go look at what we covered today and look at what they covered, and they get $1.55 billion for what they've done. Pretty impressive. So Trump has formed a naval blockade in Venezuela. Like I said, Tucker Carlson. Tucker has kind of gone out there in La La Land lots of time. He's made a lot of claims that have not turned out. Tucker seems to be attached to the wrong, he's got his ear to the ground and maybe in the wrong places. But he blew that one altogether. He claimed that was going to happen. And then, but there is, Venezuela is ramping up, getting ready for a clash. I don't know. I don't know what they can do against the American military. Seems just performative as well. He's even trying to get Colombia in on it. I won't play the clip, but because it doesn't really matter. I mean, it's just a lot of rhetoric, right?
The only thing that they could do is guerrilla warfare, but are the Americans going to go down on the ground in big numbers? Don't think so.
I think they've learned
so
that.
You can't, yeah, you can't do guerrilla naval warfare, can you? Because the American Navy will just sink whatever you want to send at them.
And then it's official. Jared Isaacman, that was Elon Musk's pick that's confirmed as Trump's new NASA administrator. And there you go. And they said that he wouldn't get confirmed. The youngest guy ever to take that job. Elon Musk has promised to have a moon base here shortly. Are you ready to go? We look pretty snappy now. We could do the news.
Maybe we'll be invited.
Base. Two snappy dudes. Two swinging brothers.
He was talking. Right? Elon Musk made quite a funny comment about. He said like the Bernie Sanders of this world, who sort of complain about everything and want to tax everything, they'll be too afraid to go to the moon and out like other planets. But once we're there and settled, they'll come and spread their ideas there too. Quite an amusing comment.
Dan Bongiovi, he quit, or he's tendered his resignation with the FBI, and he was a contentious pick as well with Kash Patel. He says that he wanted to go home to his family, so he's done some exit interviews, but is there more to it? I don't know. Who knows?
Certainly. I mean, if it's all about your family, then you wouldn't have taken the job in the first place. And this guy's also like a podcaster, isn't he? Like so many members of the Trump administration.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so what about his family when it comes to his podcast? So obviously, the family thing. We saw Sean Fraser. Remember that when it looked like he was going to lose his seat?
I've got
a family. I've got to protect that family. And then suddenly forgets
How
he has a
many?
family.
How many Liberals quit? Anita Anand, Sean Fraser. I can't remember all the ones that attended, and then they just like, oh well, maybe. I was surprised Pascal St. Onge didn't come back.
She must have been actually sick of it, unlike the rest of them who just didn't want to lose.
Here's NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte says that he says that if after the peace deal that they want strict security guarantees for Ukraine. I mean, it's heartbreaking. Go listen to that interview I did with the people in Kiev yesterday. I mean, this you got to watch it. You feel for the people. I mean, you're waking up, young people in the middle of the night to drone attacks or missile attacks and all this kind of stuff. And they were trying to get, I mean, that's what Ursula von der Leyen is trying to get the money, get all the NATO allies and that to give the money. But one thing what Rutte was saying, he can get consensus from the NATO allies to allow Ukraine into NATO. And that is one of the conditions of the Russians. And that's, Hungary, Slovakia, and the United States. I mean, the United States is the one that matters. That's the hammer, right? But here's
It's
Ursula.
the only country that matters really in most of these discussions.
Here's Ursula telling you she's getting the money one way or the other. Nobody gets to go home until she gets cash money. Because I guess she must have an investment she needs to do or something. Let's hear Ursula.
Years. We're speaking about 137 billion euros that are necessary. It's the estimate, our own estimate, and the estimate of the IMF. And we have committed to cover 2/3 of it, 90 billion euros. I have made two proposals, two options on the table for this funding. One is funding through the EU budget, borrowing against the budget, and the second possibility is the reparations loan. So today we will have the discussions about which one of the two we will use. It will be intensive discussions. For me, the most important part is that at the end of the day, we have secured the funding for Ukraine for the next 2 years.
Canada has earmarked $4.5 billion in the reconstruction. They've given and appointed Chrystia Freeland, our former finance minister and transportation minister, as the keeper of that sack of money. And they said that they will not have any disclosure on how that money is spent. Imagine you having a sack of money like that and getting to spread it around with no oversight. Wow. Quite
the privilege, isn't it?
And here's a little clip from, this is interesting. It says, we'll play the clip here. It's Britain preparing to go to war, and will they send the illegals to defend Britain? Or will the British be defending the illegals? That's a good question, isn't it?
If we are preparing to go to war at some point, these 1,000 men that we have coming in every day, are they going to be on the front line fighting for Britain? Just curious. If we are preparing...
Yeah, that's good. That's a good question.
There's been hell on in Britain because somebody in the army or something like that in the military came out and said, similar to what we've heard from a lot of European countries and NATO, came out and said, like British sons and daughters are going to have to go and be sacrificed, basically, going to have to go and fight and be prepared to fight. And the reaction to it has been very, very strong. Like the Telegraph today, I think, or yesterday, is running a major opinion piece, which basically is just telling people not to fight, and like that it's not the patriotic thing to do, to fight for this government, that kind of thing. Like really crazy sort of language that you wouldn't traditionally expect to hear in Britain. The last time I think that sort of language was heard was when the left in Britain was extremely reluctant to fight in the Second World War, and non-stop there was a left-wing campaign to kind of disobey orders and not to resist conscription and all the rest of it. So it's just a sign of just how dislocated and broken really Western societies are. Like the very idea that people will go and fight for the governments that they despise It's not really working, is it?
Cancel culture is pretty much dead too. Joe Rogan is one of the guys that broke that, and that's why people that come on here and try to do that stuff here too. It doesn't really work that much anymore. And here's an example of a Karen trying to go out there and get a lady fired and get her canceled. This is an older lady. We're going to play the interaction because I think it's important, and how the sanctimonious and the self-virtuous there are going after people all the time, and it backfired huge on her. But let's listen to this little clip here, this exchange.
Why? They let you wear that shirt here?
Yes.
So
Why? Why are you taking my picture?
why are you wearing that shirt? You're working. It's not
It's
a
a
Target
red
shirt.
shirt. I can wear any red shirt.
It's not a plain shirt.
It doesn't have to be
It's a Charlie Kirk shirt.
Yes. Oh, yes, I know.
Are you fucking stupid?
No.
Why the fuck would you wear that? You're at work at Target. That's not a Target shirt. It's not a plain red shirt.
We
You
don't.
support a racist.
It's not racist.
You support a racist.
He's not a racist.
Yes, he is.
No, he's not.
Yes, he fucking is.
That's good. That's good enough. Anyway, this lady, nurse, was trying to get her fired. She went to find a manager and all that stuff. Turns out they've fundraised now. I think it's over $180,000 for this elderly lady through GoFundMe, and the nurse has been fired. But
what a horrible, bitter, resentful woman she seems to be.
But
that's not normal for nurses. Nurses, almost like every single nurse I've ever met, has been very nice. But what a wretched human being she sounds like.
But again, the nice elderly lady says, don't fire her. Like, give her job back. Two wrongs don't make a right. I mean,
That's pretty in action, that, isn't it?
The self-sanctimonious, though, like the self-virtuous that just, like they science. So that somebody on my LinkedIn was telling me about science as well, and I'm just like, because they're the declared scientists, right, on all this stuff, right? The declared scientists. Elon Musk saying AGI could happen as soon as 2026. This is the huge race. This is you can go to the next slide. This is what it's all about. This AI is it. Alberta's figured it out. BC not so much, right? BC's like, there's rationing energy. Energy is our trump card. Energy is our trump card. We say that all the time. Energy is everything. Energy is what put us where we are. Without energy, we'd still be, what would we be doing? I don't know.
There wouldn't be very many of us. That's one of the important things to remember. Our population, the world population, is a direct consequence of our use of fossil fuels. It's conditional on our use of fossil fuels. There'd probably be like a few million of us on the planet.
Also, SpaceX. Like there is no second place when it comes to space companies. SpaceX, and it's likely going to go public here this June. So if you like what goes on at SpaceX, so they're going to do 167 launches this year. Pretty wild, eh? 167 launches. And then what's that AOC? The one that they're touting as running as a Democratic contender for the presidency, said that Elon Musk is just a fraud. He's not even an engineer. He doesn't know what he's doing.
To be honest, it's so funny that she says that, because what I was thinking when you were saying that is, in the future, if they're under a Democrat president, possibly even her, Cortez, they're going to be very tempted to just nationalize SpaceX, aren't they? Because it's got to the point now where it's so dominant that they're going to say, oh, it's a national security risk. We have to have it under the control of the US government.
It is likely the most important company on this planet. Because Starlink is in there too. And Starlink now is, you can put, did I have it? I thought I had it. Starlink, it's down later, but we'll do it after. But, there it is. Starlink is the world's largest global communications company. By far. But Doug Ford didn't want to use it, but now it's most of Africa can use it. Ukraine, everywhere. Way to go, Doug. Dump the whiskey out, light F-150s on fire. I don't know, do whatever you want. Be the performative guy. Maybe he should get the socks from Justin. Justin doesn't need them anymore. But we made a declaration early that television is dead. And here's my proof. The Oscars, not that I watch them, it bolts from ABC and is going to YouTube starting in 2029. And we're seeing that in many things. And Netflix is getting bigger sporting events. We're seeing that on Amazon. We're seeing television, cable TV, television networks. We saw that yesterday. Basically, them telling us, Numeris telling us that CBC is dead. Television, dead. Who's watching it? Nobody. Nobody. But they're still getting the money. The government money is still flowing to the CBC. YouTube. Yeah. I mean, that's why we're on YouTube. We're the best undiscovered news commentary show on the internet. If you want to be informed, tune in, help us spread the word. Of course, we're going to get some haters. You know, somebody said that all we do is wow, wow, wow. Well, we're telling you the news. We're trying to hold power accountable. We do lots of interviews as well. And we're doing one tomorrow. We've got an interview with Ravi Parmar, the forest minister. And we've done tons of interviews on forestry, including the former forest minister, including many people from industry, including the premier himself, and jobs and innovation minister. We've done tons of those interviews, and we do tons of interviews. That story on unemployment here in Kelowna, that should be a national story. It tells you what's going on, and it's good work. And we don't just like wah, wah, wah here. We're trying to tell you what's going on. Stories you won't find on the CBC. Holly Doan and Blacklocks, amazing. The stuff that they do at Blacklocks. The stuff Sam Cooper, amazing. The stuff that he does there. These independent journalists, Brian Lilly, all these guys, he's not independent, but all these guys doing work that the CBC is supposedly supposed to do. What are they doing? They basically just puff up the feathers for the Liberal Party and basically tar and feather the Conservatives. Do you know what I mean? Like, basically, whatever they're puffing up over here, they're tarring and feathering. Danielle Smith, I mean, can you point to an article that is very complimentary of Danielle Smith on CBC? I've never seen
I can't even think of a time where they have like the panels. I can't think of a time I've heard anyone speak positively about Danielle Smith.
No, I mean, she is the and the economic engine. You know what? The sad thing is the CBC is also feeding off of Alberta Energy. You know, that 1.55 billion,
Indeed.
That is coming from Alberta oil. They feast off of Alberta at the same time, just like pigs at a trough, just like slopping and then same time screaming how terrible they are. Like, tell the cook you suck. And bring another bowl, right? Isn't that amazing? If you take that picture, it's like a Monty Python skit, right? Well, they take money from Alberta oil at the same time they disrespect it at the same time.
And it's been happening for decades, hasn't it, at this point?
Anytime. Yeah, anyway. That's it. This 2-hour show today, almost exactly. But we're calling it here.
Really, really big show.
Really big show, and we're calling it here. Television is dead. There you go. You heard it here first. Subscribe, share, comment. And if you want to donate, we put a couple links in there. You can put another link at the end there, if you could. Mr. Fox at the end. And then if you like what we do, you know, we want to get Iain more ties. And what do you think? And again, Ian's rolling his eyes there. He looks sharp, though, don't you think? He looks absolutely sharp. And
I had to remember how to do a wins or not.
He did a good job. He did a good job. But you look better than, I think we look better than David Cochran and Rosie Barton.
What about that one with a hoodie on earlier? Don't look as good as her.
Anyway, there you go. Thank you, everybody. And cheers. And we'll see you tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. with Canada's best undiscovered news commentary show on the internet. Not on television, because television is dead. We said it here. All right. Cheers. Thank you for watching Now Media.
Support the news. We live here too. We're your neighbors, bringing you stories that matter to all of us. No government funding, no outside influence. Kelowna Now, local, independent. News you can trust.